and then I'll just double check the web pages. Okay, we are streaming.
All right.
All right. So welcome to B+S Gaming episode 2. Sorry it's been so long since we did episode 1. Unfortunately, real life happens.
Yeah, and your basement gets full of poop.
Yeah, well, yeah, that really sucks with you, man. That house is turning into a money pit, man.
It is, but the roof is almost done. House stuff. I guess any homeowner will tell you, like, you hope for the best, but for a brand new house, we would have figured we wouldn't have to deal with this stuff, roofs and leaky, breaking basements and stuff for at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
it's almost all done, so we're through the thick of it.
There you go. I'm tweeting everything out and posting to G+ and Facebook.
Is G+ still a thing? I mean, is there a strong community at G+?
I don't know if there really is a strong community there. I just stream there to it just for the hell of it.
Yeah, I advocated for it hard when it came out. I liked it better than Facebook. I did. I mean, I thought the layout was better. I liked the way you could organize your groups of friends. Facebook is trying to do a whole lot, and I guess that's just the evolution of it. And as a technology, I think Facebook is brilliant. But as a social space, I just prefer G+, but nobody used it. It just really sucks when somebody builds something better and nobody shows up.
Yeah.
It's just proof that just because you did it better doesn't mean that it's going to be successful.
Google's wonderful marketing abilities.
Yeah, Google. I also think that people maybe sort of feel that when Google's doing something, it's more invasive because of their whole ad revenue business model. Like they just feel like too much of the private information is being chopped up and sold to advertisers. I don't know.
Yeah. So, anyway.
So you got some stuff, Sam. You got some stuff you want to talk about?
Yes, I does. Let me there we go. So, first off, I want to give a shout out to Studio MDHR and a congratulations. In the first 2 weeks of Cuphead, it sold between all the storefronts that it was on, which is GOG, Good Old Games, Steam, and I guess we can mix Windows Store for Windows 10 and Xbox Live because it's an Xbox Play Anywhere title. Over 1 million copies in the first 2 weeks.
That's pretty awesome. It
is, and it's a fun game. It's not for everybody, but it's a fun game.
Well, it shows that people still like, fun, simple experiences that are complicated and difficult, right? Because I know this game is sort of famous for being hard, but another sort of side-scrolling platformer, which is really friggin' hard, is I bought the Mega Man pack.
Oh, right? God, I bought that a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, for whatever, his first 4 games, 5 games, something like that, and man, that game is much harder than I remember.
Or especially at least when you don't have an old Nintendo controller, so you can do the 2-finger thing for the jump and everything.
Oh, jump and shoot, yeah. I mean, I managed to get a system up for doing that with the Xbox controller, but I think maybe just as a kid, I maybe didn't think about time. Like when I keep dying over and over, I'm like, is this really worth? I could be playing something else and getting some sense of progress. When you're a kid, it's just like the challenge is laid out before you, and that's how you play the game. So I think that there is definitely a market for people who like the challenge of a hard game, and especially a single-player component, but we'll get to that later. So, yeah, I think it's great. And also I think the hand-drawn art is really cool.
It's amazing, actually. I don't know if you bought the game.
I did not.
You did not?
Not yet, no.
I did. My review is up on my YouTube channel, which everyone can check out. Link.
Which is what? Uncle Thursday game?
It's Uncle Thursday. YouTube.com/Uncle Thursday.
There you go.
And they hand drew every cell of animation and hand inked every cell of animation. And it shows. The animation quality is just superb.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's funny because there was a comparison made to Dragon's Lair. Because apparently Dragon's Lair, which is an old 80s hand-drawn game, which itself was too difficult. In fact, where Cuphead's difficulty serves as a way to enhance the experience, when you beat a level, you've earned it, and there's a great amount of satisfaction, a la Dark Souls, with that. But apparently, I remember trying Dragon's Lair as a kid. I put a couple quarters in.
Oh my
but
god,
that
you could
game
spend
was,
like $30 on that game and not get past the first level.
it was prohibitively difficult, and I think the novelty of a game that was, original content, right? It wasn't like based on some like a Disney property or something. It was an original cartoon, basically, that you just hit this big red button at the right time, and it was just really hard. I think there were more controls to that than just a button, right?
There was a joystick. There was at least one button, maybe two. But I like the timing in that game was like almost to the millisecond.
Yeah, and that's the problem. If the game, I feel like they made it that way because the idea was, it was like at the peak of the popularity of arcade games, and they made a game that had a lot of appeal, right? Because you've got basically, for the most part at that time, it's all pixelated games in arcades. So you have this game that's like literally playing a fully animated cartoon. So there's a lot of appeal. But I think,
wasn't it? It was actually made by one of the big animation studios at the time, right?
I don't actually know off the top of my head who.
I would have to look that up, but I want to say that it was done by the studios that would have done. Thank you for the follow there, Torsten. Where it would have been something akin to. God, I can't even remember those movies back in the day. But not the Disney movies, but they were like the other big ones, like The Land Before Time, that studio. I kind of want to say it was that studio, but I can't be sure.
Yeah, I was trying to look it up real quick, but I can't seem to find it.
Don Bluth? Maybe it was Don Bluth?
It was Don Bluth and Rick Dyer.
Okay.
Don Bluth was the main artist.
God, that's reaching.
And it came out in '83. Yeah. Wow. Well, anyway, it comes up and they compare it to Cuphead because Cuphead is like the new hotness, but evidently Dragon's Lair features prominently in Stranger Things season 2.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. So, and they're like expecting like a resurgence with difficult, stylized single player games. And I'm like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch. I think, Cuphead's success might be an outlier, not necessarily a sign of things to come.
True.
But that's great. It's great that they made a lot of money on that because if nothing else, it sends a message that people are willing to put down money for games that aren't chopped up and parceled out for DLC or having content thrown into loot boxes. Just a straight up video game to play, beat, and call it a day. That's
yeah. And there's even extras in it. There's different things like there's a there's a black and white mode that you unlock by going through all the running gun levels without shooting.
All right.
And there's a couple other little extras. There's like a expert mode where you just go after boss after boss after boss, and they're super hard at that point.
But it's still set up the traditional way where you have to beat the game with a certain set of circumstances to unlock, modes and stuff. I mean that's old school. That's how it used to be.
Yep.
Before marketers figured it out. And even, going back as far as 1983 with Dragon's Lair, I was starting to say that they made the game, it seems to me, very difficult because obviously if you got bit by the urge to beat it, you just keep putting in the quarters. They just saw money.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a really good early example of basically, and, arcade video games are built this way anyway, but I think Dragon's Lair might be one of the earliest, most egregious examples of how a game isn't built to be played well, or it isn't even meant to be fun. It's just meant to tap into that like addictive, I need to beat it, or I need to, keep moving forward. And so people keep putting in the money. It's, its own version of a paywall,
Yeah. In a way.
So that's, So that sounds like a really cool game that got marred a little bit by marketing and money people. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So congratulations to Studio MDHR. It was a game I was looking forward to ever since I first saw it because I love those old style cartoons.
Yeah.
You remember when we drove up to that Xbox thing, I was even saying like how awesome would it be if we could get like just a decent game. Doesn't need to be awesome, but a decent game done in the old Max Fleischer Superman style.
Yeah, I'm not really sure that style. The old Superman.
Oh, look it up online. The old 1940s Superman cartoons by Max Fleischer Studios. They're awesome.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very interesting art style. It has a bit of rotoscoping in it, but not completely. All sorts of stuff like that. So yeah, great news for Studio MDHR. It's a fun game. It's not for everybody, as I say in my review. You know, for people who just want to see what it looks like, watch videos, watch streams. You'll get everything you need. For the people who want the challenge, $20. It's a good price. It'll still take you probably about 10 hours to beat it. So I think that's a pretty good time to money ratio.
Yeah. Yep. It's good quality.
Yep. Oh, and they had like 5 animators and 1 inker. So
wow.
Yeah, and she was the producer too, so her hands must be like, you know, crumpled up and like arthritic looking by now.
Yeah.
So, but congratulations to Studio MDHR. I'm very happy about that. That a game that I was looking forward to for a good couple years came out. It was worth the wait. It was good, and they've seen the rewards for their hard work. And that's how I feel.
Yep.
Little tear. No, anyway.
There you go.
So, moving on. Man, there was some stuff we could have done off the Cuphead that I originally put in the notes about like some of these game journalists going off about, you know, difficulty and how it's ableist and everything else like that. But you know what? Fuck those guys. Just fuck them. You know, the one dude actually did put in a thing like, well, now that Assassin's Creed is doing an exploratory mode, how about a boss skip button? It's like, dude, you know what? Go watch a fucking movie. That's all I gotta say. If you don't want to experience it.
Is that actually a comment? People just want to skip the boss battles?
Oh, yeah. I linked it in the Google Doc.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at that, and then you can cringe at what he says in there. But just fucking watch a movie then.
And he wasn't being sarcastic?
No, he's not being sarcastic at all.
Jesus.
And this is the state of games journalism in 2017, in current year. But bigger news, we have EA has decided to shut down Visceral Studios, who are probably best known for the Dead Space games.
Yeah, definitely best known for Dead Space games.
They were around before that. I think they were EA Redmond before that. So they had worked on some stuff before, but the Dead Space games was their first thing under Visceral.
Yeah, and then they did the Battlefield Hardline.
Yeah.
Right, and that wasn't. I got that. That was like $5, and I picked that up, and I started to play through the story, and it wasn't bad. Multiplayer was, it was Battlefield-ish.
Yeah.
But then they were, of course, working on a Star Wars title, which is what they were working on when they got canned.
And people were really looking forward to this Star Wars title, partially because of who was involved. Amy Hennig was involved, and I mean, I know who she is. I think you know who she is. But she has a long history in game development. She worked on the old Legacy of Kain games. She was the writer and director, I believe, for the first 3 Uncharted games. So, you know, her history of shipping really good games is out there. It's long and distinguished. And EA decided they're just going to shut Visceral down. And they're going to change this game, this Star Wars game that was, according to them, quote, looking to be a linear single-player driven story game, and change that.
So it was a single-player adventure game, basically.
Yeah. Now, as a Star Wars fan, you know, I like those types of games. I don't understand why they think that's not a thing for Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I don't know, because there was, I don't remember the name of it, but there was another single-player Star Wars game that got canceled last year.
No.
They'd announced it?
No. It was when Lucas sold Lucasfilm and all of its properties to Disney.
Was it more than a year? Yeah, I guess it would be more than a year ago then.
But it was Star Wars 1313.
Yeah, and that looked cool.
It did.
In the snippets I saw. Now, my understanding is that Visceral, the developers, are just getting kind of as much as possible, which means not everyone, are being sort of redeployed throughout
different EA studios. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, at least it's not a bunch of jobs, but I guess bunch of jobs lost. But I'm curious then, why bother shutting the studio down unless they're trying to just consolidate, trim some fat. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, there could be any number of reasons why this happened. The prevailing thought is that they want to turn it into a more multiplayer-focused game that might have loot boxes and such like that.
Probably, but still, why dissolve Visceral Games, as opposed to just having them pivot on the fundamentals of the game?
Right.
That's the part that is there any known reason why?
They have not released it. It's very possible that it was just languishing in development hell. It might not have been coming along as well as they were hoping. I mean, these are definite possibilities. But when they specifically announced that they were changing the focus of the game to a more games as a service type game, that's when people said, really, dudes? Like, please, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, it's a shame. You almost sort of get the feeling that EA set Visceral up for failure because, the just sort of nefarious and infamous dud that was Dead Space 3 and all of the
I think Dead Space 3 gets like a bad rap, though. It was not a horrible game, and it actually didn't sell bad, but it didn't sell enough, according to EA.
Right. It wasn't the strongest performer in the series, in the franchise,
right.
And a lot of that probably had to do with the fact that there were content locked away for DLC, right?
DLC, and there was a way to use real money to buy like in-game resources.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's not DLC. That's just paid content.
Yeah.
Or paywall. That's another paywall. So, yeah. And I think that, and just you sort of feel like then gamers get something stuck on their craw about that, and I'm one of them. I just don't like those kind of shady business practices where you take something, that is beloved, like the Dead Space franchise, or a single player Star Wars game, and you go, you know what? Look, Overwatch and all these Mass Effect, I guess. Well, the last Mass Effect, no. But, loot boxes are just sort of the thing, right? Like, look at the recent, it's the Shadow of Mordor sequel. What is it?
Shadow of War, I think.
Shadow of War, right? And that a lot of people complain about all the loot crates and how it appeals to this, addictive
even
personality.
Battlefront 2. Star Wars Battlefront 2 that comes out in the next couple weeks, I think. Same thing. It's got loot boxes, and the thing that people don't like about those loot boxes is the stuff you get out of those loot boxes is tied to your progression in the game.
Right. Which is a real big issue.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, when you saddle a developer who probably doesn't want to put any of that crap in their game, they just want to make a game that makes the fans happy because they're probably a lot more connected to the fans than, say, a publisher would be, because a publisher is sitting behind an Excel spreadsheet looking at the numbers.
Pretty much, yeah. The publisher is the old white guy in the suit,
right?
Looking at the money.
Right, and the developers out there engaging with the community, making games for the love of making games. So it's unfortunate. I sort of just feel like EA, Golden Turd winner, has set up Visceral for this. Like, it was almost just inevitable, because it's certainly not the first time EA bought a independent developer or a small developer and chewed them up and spit them out.
Oh yeah, no, they've done it at least, I think, now 10 times in the past, which is a shame. They've done it to a couple, and there were a couple studios that made, I think Pandemic was one of them. I think they made that one, like, war, not simulator, but like that destruction game, Mercenaries, I think it was called.
Okay, yeah.
And they shut them down after the second one.
Yeah, so it's sad.
It is. It's not a good thing. But Activision has come out and said, EA, hold my beer. And they have it was recently released that a patent was just granted to them. And you haven't looked this up, so we're going to hear your lovely reaction to this, because I already know how you feel about loot boxes in general.
Yeah.
So they have a patent that essentially, to sell more loot boxes, would take lower skilled, lower leveled players match them against the higher skilled, higher leveled players that had more items in an attempt to try to get those lower skilled, lower level players to buy more loot boxes to catch up.
Okay, so basically it makes people feel like crap for losing to way better players, so they're thus compelled to spend money to win.
Yes.
So they're being compelled through addictive behavioral manipulation to pay to win.
Yes.
That should just be illegal. That shouldn't even be. I mean, here's the thing where I don't want the government jumping in every time, but there has to be some sort of way, you know, whether the industry self-polices this crap, and it doesn't seem like they're interested in that, or, you know, you have some sort of external system say, listen, you know, because at some point as a consumer, we have to have our rights protected. And I feel like this is a violation. This is clear psychological manipulation for real world money. And it's not, for some people, they can just choose to not opt in, say, hey, this sucks.
Like
you
us.
know, but there are people who, right. But there are people like the whales, and I don't know, you know, and I know industry loves whales because they basically, you know, subsidize the game for the rest of us, really, the ones who say screw this.
Yeah, and
although there should be no,
are like 5% too, like, but they subsidize
it's a small
for
percentage.
everything. Yeah.
But if a game, if a developer or a publisher requires whales to maintain success of a franchise, I mean, is it something then that should even be like, I don't know how I want to word it. So if it's not popular enough that everyone likes it, then do you really should, like, that's tough. It just bugs me hearing that, you know, like the whole, like, that just doesn't even sound ethical is the word I'm looking for. Legal? Sure, it's legal. Sure, you can make whatever game you want and everyone has a choice. They can play it or not play it, or they can play it and not get the stupid loot crates. But that is not ethical, you know? And where, at what point does, if the industry itself refuses to enforce some sort of ethical behavior from publishers, what option is left then to have the government say, you can't do this?
Well, there's actually a push in England about that. They want the Gambling Commission to get involved with the loot boxes. I know in China, the government forces games like Overwatch and stuff to show the percentage chance of an item popping out of a loot box as one thing.
Right.
They want, you know, in the UK, they're talking, there's a petition to try to get the Gambling Commission involved because people think it's gambling. And, you know, I can see that side of it because you never know what you're getting when it's an RNG.
Yeah, I'm going to say it is gambling. I mean, what's the difference between spending money, and I did this, I have to admit, on Halo 5, because I think that, and again, people, the aesthetic is a big part of the game for people, especially when they're demonstrating or in some way creating a character. It's their creativity, it's their identity online. It almost becomes a personal avatar when you play a game, especially popular games like Halo 5, where when you go out there, and even though people really don't even pay attention to what you look like, you know, because they're more concerned about the environment and shooting you. You know, they're not checking out your armor, or they're trying to like aim down their sights at you.
Look at this cool guy.
Yeah,
Let me
like,
just shoot him in the
cool
face.
Helmet. Yeah, nobody, but that's the point, right? So it doesn't affect gameplay at all for other people, but it means a lot, and it certainly is true for me. I spend a lot of time customizing characters, and the more customizing I can do, the more time I will spend. I will put a lot of time into that. You know, that matters to me. It's just cool. I like it. So my point is, with Halo 5, I think Halo 5 is some of the worst armors in any video game ever, period. They're 90% absolutely fucking hideous. Fucking hideous. So, but there was a couple that I liked, and you had to unlock them from the loot crates or whatever they call it, their cards, rec cards.
Yeah, but
it's the same thing, right? So I spent money until I, you know, came up, I rolled the right roll, and the RNG gave me the armor that I wanted. But I wanted better armor so bad so that I could play the game and kind of have a cool looking guy that I wanted, you know. And I'm not crying that I got addicted to it. What I'm saying is I would rather have spent the money. I would actually just rather have gone into a little store, and in fact, I bought a specific piece of armor. And here's where the gambling comes in. They had a store where you say, you know, you can unlock this, or you can buy it with real world money earlier. right? So let's just take the loot crate thing out of it and do, what games were doing before loot crates, right? So I could buy the game and I could spend $1, $2, whatever they would charge for armor, right? Horse armor. Probably some exorbitant price, but even if they charge something like $5, which I think is way too much for one piece of virtual armor, it's still probably significantly less than somebody would pay if they said, of all these armors, I just want that one. You buy that one, you're done. But with loot crates, you have to keep paying and paying and paying until you eventually get the one that you want. And if you have a ton of armor, and this is something that, again, I know Halo, I'm sure did it this way. You've got maybe, I don't know, 20 unique pieces of armor, but you've got in that sort of the whole collection, you've got like 150 because it's like the same 20 with stupid patterns. Yep. And those patterns themselves are even friggin' ugly. So I wanted like a plain piece of armor with no stupid pattern, but I've got to like keep buying crates and keep hoping that my roll comes up to give me what I want because there's so much other garbage armor I have to wade through. That's the addicted. That's where the gambling comes in. That is legit, straight up gambling. I could have bought it outright for $5, but instead they got me spending, $20 to get that one piece of armor.
Right. So, and it's kind of like how I said, or we had mentioned in the last show, like, when you look at, say, the way Titanfall does it, Titanfall 2, you see everything you're getting for whatever price, and you can decide yes or no. You either like it, you don't, you pay it, or you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly, I have no problem with the way, many games do their sort of like paid content, right? Like Warframe comes up. Hey, listen, if I don't like it, I don't have to buy it. And if I do like it, I can buy it, or I even have the chance, if I want to grind for it. Almost everything. But there's a couple things you can only get through paying with real world money, but okay, so what? But it in no way inhibits the gameplay, right? So, and that was the same with Halo. It's just an aesthetic thing. If you really don't care, then it doesn't matter. But
and
now
in Halo, if you could spend the amount of time, you could use the in-game currency and buy everything as well.
And you could grind for them too. Right, exactly. So it's all on me that I spent the money, but the way the system is out there is if you really want it, you want it now, you can't just buy it outright. No, you have to spend more money to keep to get more and more crates. So when we come back to the idea that, and all those things are just aesthetic, and that's enough for people to be like, and I want this thing, and I got to keep buying these stupid rec cards or loot crates till I get the thing that I finally want. It's bad enough, but it's like tolerable, right? Like, okay, fine. Like, it's crappy and I think slightly unethical, but whatever. You can grind for it, so there's nothing really to cry about there. But if you talk about now having a specific patent on psychological manipulation to, in a way, compel gamers to spend real world money on top of the money that they spent to actually own the friggin' game, I just think is wildly unethical, and that they're even allowed to do this, that they even are brazen enough to come out and try and file a patent for something like that instead of saying, it's too far. That sucks.
Yeah,
it sucks.
And the thing about it is, you have to remember that there is a skill gap in games. Okay, not everybody has the same skill. Period. And there's only so far that a specific item that could give you an advantage will give you that advantage versus someone who is just far more skilled than you at a game in.
Yeah. Okay. No,
And that was part of the other thing is like they were saying, like, take the high skill players and match them with the low skill players. So, which goes completely against all the quote matchmaking stuff that everybody's trying to push about trying to be matching with people of about equal skill, equal win to loss ratio, stuff like that. And throwing that completely out of the water just so someone says, well, you know what? If I can buy this sniper rifle that does 500 damage instead of, 100 damage, maybe that will help me. So I'll loot crate it.
And that also sucks for the good players, because now certainly while it feels good to win a lot of games, right, it never feels great to lose. What does feel good is when you win and the battle was neck and neck, right? Yeah. It's almost the same thing as like games with Cuphead or Dark Souls, where when they're challenging, that victory is so much better. If you're just stomping dudes, that's gotta get boring.
If you're raffle stomping people, I've watched people that are fine with it. They're laughing the whole time. Oh, look what I can do. But for me, okay, if we're playing, say, Titanfall 2, and the match gets down to like the last kill, that's and you win that, you're like, oh yeah, like that was awesome.
Yeah.
But if it's like, well, we've got 300 points and they've got 100 points, you don't feel. I mean, you're like, okay, let's get this match over with and get on to the next
and
one.
then it almost gets a little boring. You're just kind of running around, and then the team loses cohesion because it's not really focused on winning, because it's already melted the other team, and now it's just a matter of time until the match ends, and you're just like, So if I have to wonder if there's some, I have to read about that patent. That's wrong. That's wrong.
Yes. Now, Activision did say this patent was, quote, exploratory and is not in any game. And play devil's advocate for fucking Activision, which I can't believe I'm about to do. Somebody else was going to patent something like this anyway, and so Activision was just the first to get it. You know what I mean? Like, it was coming.
Sure, because it's not like this is the first time. I mean, I'm not naive, neither are you. It's not the first time that we've been confronted with the idea that, people who sell video games might be using some sort of psychological component to sell it or to make it, like to put some sort of edge in a game. It's not like video games don't do that, because they do resonate and they connect emotionally with people. So it leaves people in a way vulnerable to that. And I think that that's something probably that, well, shit, look, going right back to Dragon's Lair, that is, again, psychological manipulation for those few people who really want to play the game, who really dig in it. They're like, screw it, I'll just spend $10 on it. Right. So and that was the point. The game wasn't built to be fun to play. It was built to milk you for money.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is a new thing, but it's a new level, and it's crappy because not only because already pay to win, is just, it's a term that has all this baggage for a reason, right? It's a negative,
and it's mostly those, quote, free browser games that are pay to win, mostly.
Right. Well, again, yeah, because again, they're just trying to find ways to get you to keep putting more virtual quarters in there, right? Like, keep doing the thing. So that's all old stuff. But this new part where you're pitting good players against not so good players to compel the not so good players to spend money to beat. That's taking the pay to win stigma and taking it to a whole new low of scumbag.
Yeah.
That's
and of course,
it
was Activision. They were famous for Bobby Kotick. Look up Bobby Kotick, and what's the first thing that pops up? Bobby Kotick is Satan.
Yeah. He's not still there, is he? I actually haven't heard his name in a while.
I don't think he's the CEO of Activision anymore. I don't think so. But yeah, he was.
Yeah, because he had some flimsy ass excuses for why they were jacking up the prices of songs for Rock Band or Guitar Hero, whichever one that Activision was putting out. Was that Guitar Hero?
Guitar Hero, yeah.
And the way they were jacking up the prices, and he
they
said
eventually
something.
Closed that studio down too.
Yeah, and he was really cavalier about it. Like, we could charge as much as we want because people really want these things, right? Because that was at a time where it was hot. And so they did what they always do. When I say they, I mean, people sitting behind the Excel spreadsheets, is instead of, okay, how can we put a long tail on this thing? People love it. How can we create a franchise that has legs, that'll stick around for a long time and people will over time keep putting money in? No, that's not the logic. It's how can we get fast money, big piles of cash in a short period of time? Well, and they do what they did. They came out with like 10 different versions of Guitar Hero.
In about
the Beatles
6
version
months.
and the Metallica version, and they start,
Or, no, Beatles was Rock Band.
Okay, well, whatever it was, I mean? Like, I can't remember the two, but, but they started doing that. They started putting out all these different editions, and I was never able to, I never even, I had, whatever I had, Guitar Hero, I think, but I only got it to play with my wife, and we didn't play it that much, but,
we used to play Rock Band over at Derek's.
We played at Derek's, right? That was using Derek's stuff, though. That wasn't using. I'm saying, like, I never really, it was fun to play in a party environment for me.
Yes.
But to play at home by myself, I would find it kind of get boring without other people there to kind of like liven it up.
That, anyway, they killed and that's exactly it. And
so Bobby Kotick was just a real creep about that.
Yeah. And, you know, they ended up shutting down Neversoft, which they had just turned into like the Guitar Hero studio, unfortunately. So,
Right.
you know, the original creators of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater are no more.
Right. And then, yeah, there's another example of a studio that gets sort of swallowed up by a big giant, and they're basically set on like, okay, you are the Guitar Hero developer, you know, just like they've got other like Infinity Ward is now like you are the Call of Duty developer. Now they got all
Yeah, Infinity
two
Ward,
other
Treyarch, and Sledgehammer.
Yeah. So now, I mean, you want to talk, and so that there is how you milk a franchise to death.
Yes.
Because Call of Duty is clearly far from its heyday. It is way past its prime. You know, the only people that sit there and are still playing it are the hardcore fans. I don't really know the Call of Duty, and it probably sells really well, but it's not selling as well as it used to.
No, every installment for the past, at least since 2013, has sold less than the installment before, at least physically. But they're still making tons of money off it. So
right,
they're still going to do it, and that was
well, they're going to keep making money until the day that they're not going to make money, and then they basically killed the franchise, and then they're just going to like shut down all those developers because well, this franchise isn't making money. That's kind of what your job was.
Yeah.
So we don't need you anymore, and boom, you know, and there's more people out of work or get absorbed to do, you know, whatever, make more loot crates for some other friggin' game, Star Wars. So it's unfortunate, but that's my feeling on it. The whole thing is just, it reeks, it smells like shit, and I hate what the games industry has become. But, you know, I also want to point out that I feel on some level it's inevitable, because when you have an industry that starts making billions upon billions of dollars a year, all the scumbags who just want to figure out ways to get rich quick come in. That's, you know, video games used to be like almost like the hobbyist. It was like hobbies built by hobbyists for other hobbies. You know what I mean? Like video games is, you know, people weren't coming out becoming millionaires, you know, back in the late 80s, early 90s making these classic games.
Right.
They are now, though.
Yeah, and it also says a lot, too, though. I know some other shows have talked about this, where since the Xbox 360 and PS3 came out, the games have stayed the same price. They've been $60. And that's, what, 10 years now?
Yeah.
More. Which
is funny, because I still remember when that price hike took place, and we were like,
the
what? Fuck?
$10? What? Yeah, because we were paying $50 on the PS2 Xbox, the original Xbox, and the GameCube. They were all $50.
Right. Which meant aftermarket prices were even lower.
Right. You know, but then they pushed it up to $60, and some people have said, well, you know, game development costs have ballooned, and that's kind of true, but it's also kind of not, because it's not the game development costs as much that have like ballooned out of control, but the marketing costs that get added into the development cost.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, why did Ghostbusters 2000, what was it, 15, 16, whichever one it was, why was that a financial failure? Well, it made its money back as far as how much it cost to make it, but then they spent like twice that on marketing for a movie that was apparently really bad anyway. So I never watched it. You did, and told me I just should avoid it.
Oh, it sucked. It just wasn't even funny. It wasn't even funny.
And that's what you need in a Ghostbusters film, is the humor.
Good humor. Yeah, and you know, the sad thing is that I'm not going to get into a movie thing, but that movie was a complete misfire because of the director. They had a talented cast of female actors, and had they been given a better script and probably better director, it could have been a really great movie. It started out kind of good, and then it quickly went south, and I just couldn't stand. I got a lot of Schadenfreude from its failure, you know, and it's not that I'm not happy for the actors involved, you know, for all the heat that they took, which was disgusting, but the movie itself was just, it shit on the fans, and it introduced political agendas that didn't need to be there for a movie that had nothing to do with that stuff.
Right, yeah, it's a movie about busting ghosts. Busting makes me feel good, you know. So, all right, well, we're running a little bit longer than we wanted to.
So what was you had the third topic there?
Actually, that was the third topic, the Activision.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Part. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I personally, just on the Activision thing, like, I heard this, I was like, what? Like, I'm reading it at work and just sitting there with my jaw agape going, did they actually do this? And then I'm thinking to myself, I knew it was coming, but I didn't think it was coming this soon.
Yeah, you know, and honestly, I'd never even thought of that. I never even thought of, and to patent it, right? Like, which says a couple of things. A, they wouldn't patent it, you know, and despite whatever their, you know, where it's not, it's exploratory, right? But obviously, two things are happening. One, they're thinking about it and getting serious about it for filing a patent for it, and two,
they want, if anybody else does it, they want the money
because they
from
figure other people are probably going to try and do it too, so we want to stop them. We want to have we want to put a chokehold on our games,
or get the royalties for it, one or the other.
It's disgusting.
It is. So, you know, the two most hated corporations in video game business say, look at what I can do, and the other one goes, hold my beer, motherfucker.
Yeah.
It's, man, it really makes me wish
I hope we don't see much of that, you know, because what's going to happen, hopefully, is that people will start turning to small independent developers, you know, like makers of Cuphead, you know, and these AAA games, as they're so-called, which basically just means somebody with a lot of money gave a studio a lot of money to hire a lot of developers and cry about, you know, inflated development costs. Instead of just making a good game, they're trying to make a game with all these elements of like psychological exploitation. You know, get back to making good games and people will spend their money on it.
Yep.
How fucking hard is that?
Yep. You look, make me another Shadows of the Empire Star Wars game. You remember that on the N64, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was fun.
You know, make me another Dark Forces or Jedi Knight. Those games were great. Sure, the Jedi Knight games had a multiplayer component, but don't make that like the focus. Star Wars fans want a good Star Wars story, and it makes me really afraid. This is why I have not bought Battlefront 2, even though it does look and play better so far than Battlefront 1, is I have a feeling that this campaign is going to be like 5 or 6 hours, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, you know, take a look at what Respawn did with Titanfall 2. They heard people say we want a real single player experience, and they built a legitimately fantastic
short but experience. Fantastic, because there was no filler. That's what it was. There was no filler to pad it out.
Right. It wasn't filler at all. It was actually a fun story. It had some really innovative, interesting levels. It was a legitimately great game, and of course, then the multiplayer was still as fantastic as ever, and just, you know, a little bit more refined. In fact, talking about it now, I kind of want to go play some.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get really fed up with some of the stuff that I see, because I just sort of feel like it's the publishers against the gaming community. Like, they just don't care. They just want to make that money, you know. Because you mentioned Force. No, I'm thinking Force Awakens is the wrong game. The one with Kyle.
Jedi Knight and Dark Forces.
Yeah. So Jedi, like, the multiplayer was cool because you basically just picked what force powers you want. If you want dark or light, and you just ran around levels, just like blasting dudes. There was no loot. It was
basically just a big square with maybe a couple levels. A couple levels to go between.
And you just ran around and like blasted guys
and lightsabered people.
Yeah, I remember playing it. I remember like throwing your lightsaber, or I watched people like force choke me off a cliff or something, pick me up and drop me. It was fun, and there was no like, you know, oh well, you can unlock the force choke, you know, if you keep buying loot crates, and you know what I mean. Like, that's kind of what they're doing now with the Battlefront 2. Is like they're taking all the fun stuff that's in the game and then locking the game up for, you know, behind paywalls or grind. Right. Grind is okay, but it depends. It depends on what the payoff is, right? If I'm going to spend, you know, dozens of hours in the hopes of unlocking, you know, skills, part of something that should be part of a skill tree,
right? Or a level system, like, you know, okay, I'm now level 5. I've opened up this skill,
right?
You know,
I don't know.
It's we're getting to that point with the AAA industry, definitely. That we're seeing it. I mean, I guess if we just wanted to do one quick other topic, did you hear about how Bungie's player base has dropped dramatically on Destiny 2?
I have. And I can tell you from firsthand experience why. I mean, we all know why. There's no in-game content. I thoroughly enjoy the game. I played it. In fact, from the day it came out, it was probably the only game I played with a few occasional excursions into GTA 5. The game is fun, but now, there's got to be a point to a grind, right? Like in Final Fantasy, one of the grindiest games I can think of, any of them as a series, there's a payoff, right? You're grinding in Final Fantasy to level your guy up. You want to get that skill tree really opened up, or
just have enough hit points that you can one-shot the end boss,
right?
Or whatever.
I'm saying, like you're trying to level up, right? So when you get to the main boss, you don't get totally melted. I lost my train of thought.
But you just
grind
don't...
games, yeah, Destiny 2, yeah. So now in Destiny 2, it's just a grind with nothing. You're going to be getting the same exotics that you got before. And by the way, getting exotics is so easy now. Mm-hmm. I have like, they do this thing where once you get an exotic, you've effectively unlocked it in your inventory. It's part of collections. It's called collections. So even if you dismantle it, you can always go back and buy it for shards, which are... you at a certain point of playing the game for a while, you have more shards than you know what to do with. So you can buy back your exotic anytime you want, which makes it not quite as precious because, do I want to get rid of this exotic? I don't want to have to, if I want to use it later, I don't want to have to go and try and find it again or do the hard Nope. And so a lot of people are saying that the game panders too much to casual players. I don't know if that's what you heard, why there's a drop-off, but there's literally nothing to do. After a while, you're getting the same drops.
I've heard it was more the literally nothing to do. Like, there's one raid, the hard mode version of that raid doesn't even give you anything better.
Nope. You get tokens.
Yeah, and then you've got your PvP, and that's it. And people, like, there was the one site was showing, like, their daily players, and they separated it by PvP content and PvE content, and both of them dropped off dramatically.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So take Bungie's earlier works on Halo, right? You had a good single player, and you can kind of consider Destiny's sort of open world thing a single player game. You can play with groups, of course, which is supposed to make it more fun. But the raids, I've played, all the raids so many times. Or the strikes, so they're kind of boring, right? So there's really, I can go in there and shoot stuff if I'm in the mood to shoot stuff, and then the PvP, I enjoy it. It's a Bungie multiplayer game, so that the PvP plays nice. I'm just not a fan of the powers, the superpowers. It basically means that, like, although everyone has the ability to take their power and wipe out the other team,
right?
I just don't like the fact that there's a nuclear option at all, and that's what it is. Once I get, like any of them, they're all you just wipe out the enemy team. I was never really a fan of it. If I'm going to play multiplayer, I've never really been super into the Destiny multiplayer, or PvP, I guess we're calling it. So, I'll go to games like Overwatch or Halo or especially Titanfall 2.
Yeah, which just has a phenomenal multiplayer component. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I was sitting there, right, and I was playing Destiny 2, PvP, right? And I was trying to think, like, and it's the same thing. Like, I was getting stressed. I'm like, I'm trying to, like, I'm trying to focus, to kind of, support my team and, get the kills and keep myself from getting killed, right? So I can get that KD up, right?
Right.
And, then some guy just comes along and just, like, wipes out our team because he's got, like, whatever, his super on. Like, ugh. So, and it really got me frustrated. I'm like, oh, and I'm sitting here as I'm playing the game, like, okay, let me just try to channel my Titanfall 2 brain, because I rarely get that, like, upset. Like, I don't know, something about Titanfall 2, I guess, is my ideal concept of a balanced game, I guess. Maybe that's why I don't get annoyed, because the game is so well balanced, in my opinion.
It feels kind of like the old Unreal tournaments in that way, where it's like, or the old Quakes. There's no special, like, no gun is going to give you an advantage, like super advantage, but you're never at a true disadvantage, even if you have just, like, your starting weapons. You can still kill people.
Yeah, Unreal Tournament was definitely good for that. Same thing, right? You were having so much fun playing the game that even when you died, it didn't matter. Because all the fun stuff, right? But, like, I don't know. you know, whatever. Yeah, I'm not surprised that Destiny 2 has a drop off, and it'll pick back up when the first DLC drops. And well, I wouldn't say a mistake. I bought the game, and I thought if I like the game, I'll get the season pass. I did. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I got the season pass. And so I'll probably play some when season pass content comes out. But, the truth is, original Destiny had the same problem. And it wasn't until basically the very end.
King. Yeah, Taken King.
Yeah, right. That they finally managed to get...
Which was the third expansion.
Right. They finally managed to get that game into some sort of, like, fun playable state. And I want to add this, too, about Destiny 2, since we're talking about it. Destiny 2, unfortunately, because they changed a lot of economies and... just like the systems, right? Like all the different ways. Did it
become very convoluted, you said, with the different monies?
In one. Even by the end, they kept introducing all these different currencies, So, but they streamlined a lot of it, right, in Destiny 2. But here's something interesting. They didn't overhaul the game. And I'm not going to knock a company for trying to cut down on development time by building on the previous game. But this is literally, other than the fact that they've streamlined a bunch of stuff, it doesn't feel like a sequel. It feels like Destiny 1 with like some added content. Ironically, because it feels so much like Destiny 1, it feels even less, because now you had this massive chunk of content in Destiny 1, and then you come to Destiny 2, and it still feels like the same game. You don't feel like you're playing a different, newer version. So it just feels like the same game, but less, and they did something that I thought was interesting. First of all, the character creation, completely untouched from the first game, which I thought was kind of beat. Okay. Just add more faces, more, I don't know, you have time, right? Like, you're in the sequel. You can't just add more customizable bits. And also with the weapons. So in the first one, as people who've played the game will know, that you got a gun, and then you would there was a progression on that gun to level it up, to unlock its features. Well, that doesn't exist in Destiny 2. You get the gun, and it's all the same. Like, you open up the info panel, and all that, all the upgrades to it are there, but everything is already triggered. Like, everything's already just filled out. There is no like leveling up your gun anymore. What that tells me is they basically took that, whatever that like system was, right? And instead of overhauling it, and just kind of creating a gun with like a list of its features, they kept even the interface is exactly the same. It's just everything's automatically unlocked, which tells me that instead of changing it, they just set it in the code to everything unlocked. Like, instead of giving it an overhaul. So they changed some stuff, but other stuff they're just like, they left it exactly the same. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes if it isn't broke, don't fix it, and I think that that's fair. But I also think that if unlocking that doesn't happen anymore, why have that whole UI still sort of there, set up to demonstrate that? Just show it, just change it. I don't know. Maybe they had long conversations, and very smart people made really good arguments as why to keep it that way. I don't know. All I know is it just feels like they took something old and they just sort of like tweaked it a little bit and then threw it in there and said, let's call it a day. Yeah, whatever. Right. What it feels like is just shortcuts.
And it's not like in both of our cases we could ask Wolf, but he wouldn't have anything. He's just a tester. And then my other friend, who is the higher up guy at Bungie, he's a programmer. He's not a designer.
Right.
He just programs the stuff.
Right. So even then, you basically just get your marching orders.
Exactly.
You don't know, like, all the decisions and the process for that decision making happen long before it gets to the developer.
Exactly.
And I was actually talking to Wolf Boy, and he said that this time on Destiny 2, he worked on the internal tools. So he didn't even actually work on the game directly. He worked on the tools that they used to build the game. So I don't know. He's not a super high ranking guy. I'm sure he's down in the trenches. He's a grunt. So he doesn't, same thing. He doesn't know any of the decisions made or why. I'm sure he doesn't know, but he said he was kind of,
and my other friend, like, I don't want to mention any of his names so people go looking him up or whatever, but he is, if like I could show you his name in the credits and you would see that he's a high level programmer. So, but even then, he's not a designer. He just makes sure that it works.
Yeah. Yeah, and also bear in mind too, like even the designers probably sit down with the managers and the publisher because,
Yep.
like I said, there's certain things in there. I'm sure that Bungie was like, ugh.
Like
All right, let's try and figure out
for
an
the
elegant.
shaders.
Yeah, right. Like that seems to me to be like the publisher is talking with the team leaders saying, okay, where can we put in little paywalls for stuff?
Yep.
And Bungie was probably like, nowhere.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, it's got to be somewhere.
Got to be somewhere.
So yeah, and so they probably looked at like the most hopefully menial outlying things, but they got a lot of blowback for the shaders, which it turns out to be, I think at this point now, it's a slightly unfounded concern. You get so many shaders, it's not really a big deal.
Yeah. So, all right.
All right. I think
we've gone long. Yeah.
Yep.
And we do have a movie to go watch in a little while.
Yeah.
We gonna go watch Blade Runner 2049, is it?
That is right.
Yes. Which theater are we going to? The one right by your place?
Yeah, one by me.
Okay.
It'll start at 7. Nick is gonna meet us there.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, we gonna go watch a movies. Yeah. Sorry, that was my almost Rob impression. So anyway, thank you for joining us. Those of you that have joined us. Hopefully you guys liked what you've heard. We're still working out how we're going to work this. We're going to try to get a bit more concise in the time.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to get a much more predictable schedule. But obviously real life life comes at you fast sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially, your house and my health.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, the last couple of weeks have not been awesome, so. But yeah, we'll definitely get there. We'll hammer it out.
Yep. So I'm Sam.
I'm Bill.
And thank you for joining us.
Take care, everybody.